It's really late, but we do in fact have a bus. Just got off the bus and we have a nice steam engine across the street to look at as you're just walking in. So I have a few pictures from a previous visit to Huntington Park across Warwick Boulevard from the Amtrak station, including of an old sign and a more recent sign that they added later, including information on how they actually got the locomotive to the site, which I thought was cool. And this is the most pedestrian-friendly Amtrak station that was ever constructed. No sidewalk, just grass and a little parking lot driveway. And that is it. And we have our train coming in. My apologies for the lack of station review, but I did want to get a look at the train and get on it since it just came in. This was the last Northeast Regional out of Newport News for the foreseeable future with all forward-facing seating. From an outdoor perspective, I will say that the new asphalt is a nice change from the old rotting wooden canopy they used to have covering the whole station. And here's the last view of the all forward-facing seats in the Northeast Regional out of Newport News. The ride out of Newport News to Richmond wasn't too eventful. Going through Richmond is always one of my favorite parts of the trip. It's a super cool city to look at from the train. Down there you can see some old streetcar tracks from who knows when. And I just love passing the buildings with only a few, maybe even less than that, feet of clearance. It's that close. I just like looking at the old warehouses. A lot of them have been converted into apartments. I think there's one that's a public storage place now. It's just cool to get to see the rooftops from this angle, which you can get from the I-95 freeway through the middle of town, but it's not the same as being on the train. Plus, I-95 doesn't stop at Richmond Main Street Station, which is a very cool and beautiful building. The view from the other side, unfortunately, is plagued with more freeway ramps and bridges than this side, but I will show a shot of that in a few seconds from a later trip I took. If you can ignore the freeway, this is truly a beautiful building, and I wish we could, still have more train stations that look like this. And I'd love to actually board or get off here someday. Haven't had the chance to yet, or really a reason to take the train to Richmond, but it might be a fun day trip sometime. Shortly after Richmond Main Street, we go through Richmond Staples Mill, which should absolutely not be Richmond's main junction station. I think that should be moved to Main Street if possible, because it's such a better station. We did get a nice view of some, what I'm guessing are private passenger cars, some Pennsylvania, RF&P, and whatever else is behind the freight consists sitting in the yard. Going through Ashland is always fun. I love the street running, or really running in the middle of the street separated by a median, but close enough. It is super cool just getting to run right through the middle of downtown in people's front yards, basically. So it got pretty dark soon after Ashland, so this is actually a shot from between Williamsburg and Richmond of the Chickahominy River. I think it's a pretty great view, but I didn't have anything filmed until I got to Alexandria, where I met up with my friend Shirley on 819, and we rode the metro for a bit. So I got to Alexandria just a few minutes late, and shortly after got on the metro. We're playing a game called Are We Stopping at Arlington Cemetery? Because maybe.
No. Actually, you're trying to go here.
First time I've ever heard that. Goodbye, Arlington Cemetery.
There's no train.
Any outbound trains? Nope, nothing. Nice station.
It is. Very neat.
So after zooming through Arlington Cemetery without stopping, we transferred at Roslyn. Half the escalators were closed, so only one up and one down escalator were open. But there wasn't a huge crowd of people since it was pretty late at night, so transferring was not a problem at all. The Orange Line train came pretty soon after, so we got on it towards Vienna. And I'm sure frequency is not amazing at this time of night, but it wasn't bad for our purposes.
Did you know that you can walk here?
Metro branded pedestrian access through the park and ride and a very rainy uncovered street, and Florida making an illegal right on red from the center lane, but okay. Anyway,
Florida moment.
we are in Vienna, and there is indeed Metro pedestrian access
We are going
next to the woods.
Transit accessible woods.
My spring break in the DC area was pretty good. I rode more transit with Shortline 819 later in the week, and There's going to be probably a whole video on his channel coming out pretty soon. And here we saw a silver-wrapped 3000 series pair. They're not extremely rare, but they're decently uncommon on the system. And I've only seen them a couple times before. I think this is the second time I ever saw one. So that was kind of cool, and I've been spotting them since. We were on Virginia Railway Express running southbound parallel. So as you can see, they passed us, we passed them. This went on for a few minutes. So I actually didn't book the train ticket northbound out of Newport News with the intention of it being the last all-forward-facing seat train out of that station, but it just happened that that's what happened, and it was actually announced after I booked the ticket. And the reason they're doing it is to allow for more frequency and less turnaround time between trains having to reverse directions and the crew having to come through and switch all the seats around, or for the train to have to go through a Y and just take a time in the yard and have to just navigate through all that. So it means more frequency, and riding backwards really I don't think is that much of a problem. And you'll hear in a very short amount of time my further thoughts on those half seats facing forward and half seats facing backward on my trip back down to Hampton Roads. So I took the metro back to Alexandria to get the train, but we actually went through the middle track at National Airport, which is always super cool. I'd actually never been through the middle track before. From my understanding, they used to, or maybe this is just temporary, but they usually would use the two outer tracks. So the center track would just sometimes serve as a storage space for out-of-service trains, and south and westbound towards Franconia trains and Huntington trains would go on the platform you see here, and then on the other side, the trains towards Largo and Mount Vernon Square would leave. So the middle track was usually not used for in-service trains, but today it was, so that was super cool to get to ride down, I guess, technically metro mileage I haven't been on before, down the middle track at National Airport. And the middle track is cool because there's actually platforms immediately on either side of the train, so if they wanted to open doors on both sides, they could. So before boarding in Alexandria, I noticed they changed some of the wayfinding, and by change the wayfinding, I mean put duct tape over a misleading arrow that used to point across the station instead of directly down to the track, because track 3 at Alexandria is the closest to the station building, but for some reason the arrow pointed away from the station building, so I think people just got confused and they duct taped it over. So the track that train just came in on that's actually track 2. The one that's unoccupied closer to me is track 3, and the one behind the fence that they rarely use, is track 1. But I have heard stories of people actually having to get off the train there, so I'm curious how that operates. And my train came in right after the other one did, so busy day at Alexandria. So this is actually a shot from when I was getting off the train in Norfolk. I was doing the bus connection from where you take the train to Norfolk and then they bus you over to the Newport News station. But this is when everyone got off the train, because in Alexandria the train was extremely full, so I didn't really get any good opportunities to get a good shot of the car. And I'm not sure how much reclining space you get if you're in the two seats that face backwards to each other, but that'll be something to try sometime. So this is a shot of the train going southbound, or really eastbound at this point, through Waverly, Virginia. Cute little small town. Some little old buildings in the downtown area. I think it's literally a one traffic light town. Might be wrong. And I think if people are concerned about riding backwards, I would say the train's super smooth. It's not like a car where if you can't see at the front and you're bumping around all the time, it's not the same feeling at all. It's a very different feeling. Now, you might still get motion sick, and that's okay. There's still plenty of forward-facing seats, and on the way back down, even if I wanted to get a backwards-facing seat, they were taken, so I had to sit facing forwards anyway. That's just how the train was when I got on it. And funny enough, when I rode northbound out of Newport News, I actually sat in the cafe car for most of the trip with friends, and I was actually in the backwards-facing booth, so I rode backwards on the forwards-facing train, and I rode forwards on the backwards-facing train. So I did get both experiences, although not really the way Amtrak intended. But I think the backwards seats, again, will be an improvement if it means more trains more often. And in this last shot, you'll see us crossing over the Elizabeth River into Norfolk, Virginia. The last stop, I presume the southernmost stop on the entire Northeast Regional line of Amtrak. And the connection bus, even though our train to Norfolk was 10 minutes early, ended up being about on time to Newport News because we had traffic on the Monitor Merrimack Memorial Bridge Tunnel, one of the many long named roadways in Hampton Roads. But the ride back was okay other than the traffic, and there were less than a dozen people on the bus, so I think it's interesting that they run it. More people, I think, got on the Virginia Beach Connection bus from Norfolk. And I just wish that there was rail transit across the James. I'm aware it's a wide river, but they built roads across it, so I don't see why we can't build a metro system across it. There's enough people down here to even have like a St. Louis style metro. But in closing, just thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed.